What do people think when they think about the richest countries in the world? And what comes to mind when they think about the smallest nations in the world? Some would be surprised to find out that the wealthiest nations are also amongst the tiniest. Let's have a look at them. 10. Switzerland. White chocolate, the bobsleigh, and of course, the Swiss Army knife. But also the computer mouse, Velcro, and LSD. The list just goes on and on. These are only some of the inventions that Switzerland has contributed to the world. Today, however, this country of 8.6 million owes much of their wealth to its banking and insurance services and to tourism, as well to exports such as pharmaceutical products, gems, and precious metals, precision instruments and machinery from watches to medical apparatuses and computers. Though Switzerland has a fairly diverse economy, gold makes up by far the largest share of its exports. About a quarter of the nation's $285 billion in exports in 2017 was in gold. Is it really a surprise that Switzerland has the highest density of millionaires in the world? For every 100,000 residents, there are 9,428 of them, billionaires included. 11.8% of the total considering just the adult population. All the money in the world, however, could not have shielded the Swiss economy from the effects of COVID-19. In 2020, production was expected to decline by 7%, pushing the country into what is possibly its worst recession since World War II. 9. Kuwait. The flat Arabian Desert covers most of Kuwait's territory. It was only in 1938 that oil was discovered under its sands. A lot of oil. Kuwait makes up over 6% of the world's total reserves. Today, the oil industry accounts for about 40% of the country's GDP and over 90% of its exports. With a population of approximately 4.1 million, 3 million of which are experts, almost entirely concentrated in urban areas. This tiny state on the northern edge of the Persian Gulf is one of the Middle East's most advanced and democratic. However, the historical declines in oil prices recorded in recent years have begun to worry the very rich Kuwaitis. In 2015, the government announced the first budget deficit in more than a decade. A few others followed after that. The country has since then taken steps to diversify its economy by allowing 100% foreign ownership in a number of sectors and offering various tax breaks to investors. The story, however, is entirely different when it comes to foreign workers. Faced with the economic uncertainty brought by the coronavirus pandemic, the National Assembly has recently passed a bill to drastically reduce their number as a consequence of its rising demands for jobs among locals. Hundreds of thousands of livelihoods, along with the crucial remittances contributing to countries such as India, Egypt, and the Philippines, are at stake. 8. United Arab Emirates. Agriculture, fishing, and trading pearls. These used to be the economic mainstays of the Persian Gulf nation. Then, oil was discovered in the 1950s and everything changed. Today, its highly cosmopolitan population enjoy considerable wealth. Traditional Islamic architecture mixes with glitzy shopping centers, and workers come from all over the world, lured by tax-free salaries and year-round sunshine, to the extent that only about 20% of the people living in the country are actually locally born. The United Arab Emirates economy is also becoming increasingly diversified. Outside the traditionally dominant hydrocarbon sector, trade and finance, as well as construction and tourism are major industries. The previous year, however, its beaches and hotels remained empty. The city was supposed to hold the much-anticipated Dubai World Expo, the biggest event it has ever hosted, with some 25 million overseas expected to visit. For obvious reasons, it had to be postponed. The UAE has among the highest rates of primary school enrollment and primary school completion, setting up students for future success. The country also has one of the lowest unemployment rates in the world, at 2.6%, just over half of the 5.0% worldwide unemployment rate. 7. Norway. Since the discovery of large offshore reserves in the late 1960s, Norway's economic engine has been fueled by oil. As Western Europe's top petroleum producer, the country has benefited for decades from rising prices. Not anymore. After prices crashed, the global pandemic ensued, sending the krone in freefall. Today, this export-reliant economy faces its first recession since the global financial crisis. Does it mean that it will become significantly less wealthy? Probably not. In June 2020, just weeks after cutting the interest rates to zero, the governor of the country's central bank said he was surprised by the speed and strength of the rebound in productivity. On the other hand, when it comes to any economic problem fate might throw at them, Norwegians can always count on their $1.2 trillion sovereign wealth fund, the world's largest. Not only that, they know that with great riches comes great responsibility. Contrary to many other rich nations, high per capita GDP figures are truly a reflection of people's financial well-being. Norway has one of the lowest income inequality gaps in the world. Norway has among the best health outcomes in the world. The country has a life expectancy of 82.5 years, more than a decade higher than the global average. Norway also has among the lowest rates of maternal mortality and childhood mortality for children under 5. 6. Ireland. Until recently, Ireland seemed unstoppable. While the rest of Europe was facing all sorts of uncertainties like Brexit, trade tensions with the US, refugees, and migrant crisis, to name a few, the Irish economy just kept humming along. In 2019, while the Eurozone grew only 1.2%, it expanded by over 5.5%, consolidating its role as the fastest-growing country on the continent. A nation of fewer than 5 million inhabitants, Ireland was one of the hardest hit by the global turndown. Following some politically difficult reform measures, including sharp cuts in public sector wages and restructuring its banking industry, the island nation regained its fiscal health, boosted its employment rates, and saw its per capita GDP almost double to its current levels. Do citizens feel twice as rich as 10 years ago? Probably not. Ireland is one of the world's largest corporate tax havens, with ordinary people benefiting infinitely far less than companies do. And while they're undoubtedly better off than they're used to, according to data from the OECD, the national household per capita disposable income is actually lower than the overall member country's average, about $25,300 a year versus $33,600. With a considerable gap between the richest and poorest, the top 20% of the population earns almost 5 times as much as the bottom 20%. Most families would balk at the idea that they are wealthy, especially now that the economy is projected to shrink more than 7% by year end. Ireland relies heavily on exports. Its top exports are chemicals, like packaged medicaments. The exports are actually worth more than its GDP, which is the case in only 7 other countries. Before we get into the top 5, if you haven't yet subscribed to our channel, kindly do so by clicking on the subscribe button so that you can continue enjoying more of our amazing content. Please give us a like, share the video, and don't forget to turn on the notification bell for timely updates of our latest uploads. 5. Brunei. 1,788 rooms, including 257 bathrooms, a banquet hall that can accommodate up to 5,000 guests, a mosque for 1,500 people, an air-conditioned stable for 200 polo ponies, 5 pools and 18 elevators. This is where Hassan al-Bolkiah, the Sultan of Brunei, lives. His fortune derived from the immense reserves of oil and natural gas of the country is estimated at about $28 billion, more than 50 times that of Britain's Queen Elizabeth. Despite Bolkiah's opulence and on-paper per capita purchasing power of over $80,000, malnutrition in Brunei is commonplace. Although the data is scarce, it has been estimated that out of its 450,000 population, up to 40% earns less than $1,000 a year. Luckily, the country was spared the worst of the coronavirus pandemic. In July 2020, noting that no new cases of infection have been recorded in more than 2 months, Brunei's Ministry of Finance and Economy stated that in the first quarter of the year, as most other nations were already sliding into a recession, the economy had grown by 2.4%. The country is not without its economic and social problems. Operating under Sharia law, citizens can be stoned for adultery and have a limb amputated for crimes like theft. Brunei also has the highest unemployment rate among the 25 wealthiest countries at 9.2%. 4. Singapore. With an estimated net worth of $16 billion, restaurateur John Young is the richest person living in Singapore. A close second with assets of about $14 billion is Eduardo Saverin, the co-founder of Facebook, who in 2011 left the U.S. with 53 million shares of the company and became a permanent resident of the island nation. Saverin did not choose it just for its urban attractions or natural gateways. Singapore is an affluent fiscal haven where capital gains and dividends are tax-free. But how did Singapore become so prosperous? When the city-state became independent in 1965, one half of its population was illiterate. With virtually no natural resources, Singapore pulled itself up by its bootstraps through hard work and smart policy, becoming one of the most business-friendly places in the world. Today, Singapore is a thriving trade, manufacturing, and financial hub. That is not as saying that it has been immune from the effects of the global downturn. In the second quarter of 2020, the economy plummeted a record 41%, knocking the country into recession for the first time in a decade. 3. Luxembourg. You can visit Luxembourg for its castles and beautiful countryside, its cultural festivals or gastronomic specialties. Or you could just set up an offshore account through one of its banks and never set foot again, as many do. It would be a pity, though. Situated at the very heart of Europe, this nation of about 600,000 has plenty to offer, both to its tourists and its citizens. Luxembourg uses a large share of its wealth to deliver better housing, healthcare, and education to its people, who by far enjoy the highest standard of living in the Eurozone. Yet, while both the global financial crisis and the pressure from the EU and OECD to reduce banking secrecy have had little impact on the economy, the coronavirus outbreak forced many businesses to close and workers to lose their job. Statec, the National Government Statistics Service, has already stated that it expects the recession to be as short as it has been sharp, and that in 2021, the Grand Duchy's GDP will rebound by 7% from 6% in 2020. The country topped the $100,000 mark in per capita GDP in 2015 and never looked back ever since. Even the pandemic is unlikely to change that. 2. Macau. In Asia's gambling capital, many are betting that Macau will climb to the first spot of the richest nations ranking very soon. Formerly a colony of the Portuguese Empire, since the gaming industry was liberalized in 2001, this special administrative region of the People's Republic of China has seen its wealth growing at an astounding pace. With a population of just over 600,000 and more than 40 casinos spread over a territory of about 30 square kilometers, this narrow peninsula just south of Hong Kong is almost literally a money-making machine. But how can you gamble and social distance at the same time? While Macau has certainly recorded a severe slowdown in activity, it has also managed the health emergency successfully. With less than 50 overall initial cases, no new infections since, and no fatalities. In July 2020, the city reopened to travelers from the mainland without requiring them to undergo 14 days of mandatory quarantine. Macau, it turns out, can do very fairly well without foreign tourists. In 2019, out of almost 40 million visitors, Nearly 71% of them were from continental China. 1. Qatar. About $15,000 is, on average, how much each Qatari citizen has lost every year since the hydrocarbon prices started dropping in 2014. Still, the country's oil, gas, and petrochemical reserves are so large, and its population so small, just 2.8 million, that this marvel of ultra-modern architecture, luxury shopping malls, and fine cuisine has managed to top the list of the world's richest nations for 20 years. Will it retain this record? With only about 12% of the residents being Qatari nationals, the country, similarly to many other Gulf states, saw COVID-19 spreading among low-income migrant workers, living in crowded quarters at furious speeds. By mid-July 2020, tallying one of the world's highest per capita rates of infection, the number of confirmed cases was exceeding 100,000. Yet, surprisingly, the economy is projected to keep growing over the medium term, amid a rise in gas production and investment in preparation for the 2022 World Cup. By then, hopefully, social distancing on the stands will not be required. Did you enjoy our video? Have you visited any of these countries? And if so, what was your experience? Well, if you enjoyed our video, be sure to subscribe to our channel for more of our amazing content. Please give us a like, share the video, and don't forget to turn on the notification bell for timely updates of our latest uploads. We value your feedback. Feel free to share your thoughts with us in the comments section below.